Fancy. Yeah, like hurry up. Okie doke. Sure. Oh my god. Okie doke. Ready.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Small Screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian and Rachel. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about today The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 10, Retrieval. The second half of what seems to be a two-part arc. Maybe there's a third part to it. We'll see. What's new? What's different? What's changed? I am recording out of a new space right now. I'm on a work trip, so I'm recording out of our office in Raleigh. So that's why if you are watching live on Twitch or YouTube, you are seeing me in a kind of a weird spot, to be honest. And there's a big boring gray wall behind me. You can see the ring light on in the reflection of the window. And in fact, I think it's washing me out. So that's another problem for another day, perhaps. But
the struggle.
Yeah, and I'm at a standing desk, so this is a very different experience for me too. I've never done a podcast standing up, so if I sound different, it's because my lungs aren't compressed by the slouching that I'm typically doing.
Interesting. Huh.
Hey, have you ever worked at a standing desk before?
No, I'm not for that. If I'm going to be working at a desk, I want to sit down.
Yeah, that's typically my attitude as well. And to be
honest,
honest,
one of my bosses has a standing desk though. Our chef at work has a standing one now. But he's not at it very often.
During the day, I just can't be bothered to like
Oh, that sounds exhausting.
stand. So this is just a different experience. I had a nap at lunch, so I feel like I have a little bit of extra energy,
Oh,
and we'll see if that
it's
translates into
it's too
the.
bad it's not one of those walking desks with
Oh
like
yeah.
the treadmill underneath.
For those who are watching at home, I'm pretending to walk right now. I'm doing like
Hmm.
so I'm walking in place. I don't think I could do a whole podcast like that. I think it would be like a little wonky with the sound on like your lungs. Like you'd be breathing hard the whole time, so that wouldn't work too well.
You'd be out of breath from walking.
Well, you have to think and walk and talk at the same time. That's exhausting.
I guess so. Fair enough.
So, what are we going to talk about today? Like I said, we're going to talk about Retrieval.
The Bad Batch.
Yeah, we're talking about the Bad Batch. Before we get into that, I'll just quickly remind everyone and do a little bit of house cleaning. So, follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and head over to our website, towerofbabble.ca, to find everything that we do. There's going to be a lot more coming, actually, soon. So, next week, and this is where it gets confusing, because next week, we have a new episode of The Bad Batch on Wednesday, but also the premiere of season 3 of The Mandalorian.
Right.
And I want to say last time this happened, they ended up bumping I think The Bad Batch to Friday nights during the
Maybe?
run. That sounds
I don't
familiar
know.
to me, but so far the schedule hasn't changed.
Yeah, you're right. Because I feel like there was a while there where we were podcasting on like Thursday and Sunday.
That does sound right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no indication that I can tell at this point that they're going to change the schedule for the Bad Batch. They might be dropping 2 episodes on the same day, which seems excessive to me. Like, I don't think we need that much Star Wars on one day. I mean, maybe I'm just speaking from our own selfish perspective, where it's like hard to cover 2 things at once. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is the schedule at this point is up in the air. We will have to decide come next week how we're going to cover that.
Yeah.
I want to say that Mando will get priority between the 2 shows.
Probably, yeah.
Especially considering it's a premiere episode.
Especially a premiere episode. We'll see. It depends which episode is better. But I mean, like...
that's right. We're actually just going to base it
I feel
on
like Mando will probably come out first. If Mando's for sure on Wednesday, and like, yeah, maybe Bad Batch might come out a little later. Sorry to those of you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it, and it's like, I don't think we have, like, we did that 2-hour episode a couple weeks ago to cover those 2 big episodes of the Bad Batch.
Right.
That's a lot. I don't think we can do that every week. Like, I don't know if I have the
Yeah.
human energy within me. The other thing is, and this is a wrinkle only for next week, which is that I will still be here in Raleigh, and the work stuff is just going to go through the roof. It's going to be very busy here,
Right.
for the day job. So there's very possible that I won't even be able to record at all next week during the week, and that the first episode that we'll be able to record won't be until the weekend. But either way, we will keep everyone up to date on what is happening with the Twitter at Tower Babblecast on Twitter. Stay tuned there. Rest assured, we will cover the shows, but when and how is going to be decided basically on Wednesday or Thursday next week. Yeah.
And like, if you feel so inclined, you could join our Discord and talk to us about it there if you're really wanting to talk about it beforehand.
You know what? That's a great point.
As I will plug our Patreon.
Let's do that. Let's plug the Patreon. I mean, so yeah, if you want to help support the show and you're thinking, man, these guys have a lot of work to do, you could go over to patreon.com/TowerBabblecast for as little as $2.50, which gets you access to the Discord, or $5, which gives you access to the Discord as well as our monthly film club. We're doing. We have to actually. We need to schedule that now that I think about it. We're doing Jackie Brown this month, so that's exciting. And you also can, of course, look forward to. This is not behind the paywall content, but we will be doing an Oscars preview show of some kind. I know the Oscars are coming up very quickly, so we'll be doing that in some form or fashion over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. Okay, that's enough preamble. Let's get into this episode. And this episode is called Retrieval. It's called. Here's the log line: attempting to recover a lost asset, the Batch must learn to trust a thief. Now, it seems like this was maybe written so that it didn't give anything away from the last episode, the previous episode, but considering that we don't really see the log lines until the next week, they could have just said trying to recover their ship. That would have been fine.
Yeah.
But the rest is accurate. They must learn to trust a thief. A thief played by none other than Yuri Lowenthal. And Yuri Lowenthal is a prestigious voice actor, has been in the video game industry forever. He has, if you look at his IMDb, 790 acting credits to his name.
Holy.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is wild, including 15
That is
producing and
wild.
15 writing credits. But I think in terms of what do people know him from, there's a couple things. But he plays Peter Parker Spider-Man in the Insomniac Spider-Man PlayStation games. He's also He-Man in the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe show. He is Ben, the titular Ben in Ben 10. And there's a whole. I mean, I could go on forever. He's in Bayonetta 3. He's in Call of
Are you
Duty.
talking He-Man like straight from the 80s?
No.
He-Man?
This is a new,
Oh,
version
okay.
of He-Man.
New version.
It's a
Okay,
new
because I was
version.
like, whoa.
Yeah, not as good as the new version. By the way, this is just an aside, but the quote unquote new version of She-Ra, Princess of Power,
Right.
on
Yeah.
Netflix is very, very good. Like top tier animated show. Highly recommend
Ooh,
it.
okay.
Go and check that out. Although I don't recommend subscribing to Netflix in these turbulent times while they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff like locking people out for password sharing of all things. We're not going to get into that. We just got into that recently. It was too much of a tangent, but I'm still pissed about it. I actually posted another article about it on the Twitter recently that I read, as well as I read another one today about that was basically saying that the content at Netflix is so bad that it just doesn't make sense to justify what they're doing right now. So
honestly, yeah.
Anyway, that's a story for another day. So anyway, that's Yuri. He plays Benny in this. Benny Barrow. So he actually gets a full name, which it makes me think that he'll probably come back at some point. We also have Jonathan Lipow, who longtime Star Wars voice actor, plays Mako here. Alex Lee plays Drake. And then obviously D. Bradley Baker and Michelle Ang for the rest of the cast. But nice to see the voice cast expand a little bit from last week when there was basically just D. Bradley Baker and Michelle Ang.
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, this was written by Dave Filoni and Jennifer Corbett and directed by Brad Rao and Stuart Lee. Overall thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, it was fine. I don't know. I just feel like I don't know what it is with me and this show so far, but like, I don't know. I'm not like let down by it. Like it was like it had some exciting things and some interesting like a storyline about like what's going on in like another part of the world, but like I wasn't as invested, I guess is what I'll say.
Sure.
Like I'm not as invested in the new characters or the new storyline. And I think it's because I'm just like I'm really wanting more of like some of the other stuff we've got.
Crosshair? I saw a funny meme today. It was like it's 10 episodes into season 2 and he's only been in one episode. Basically, I don't remember what the stupid image was for the meme, but it was basically like someone freaking out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, I don't know. Like I was kind of maybe hoping that they would be like off this planet faster, but like I get that they're just kind of like they're retrieving their ship and yada yada. Because how many episodes do we have? 20?
I'm checking to see. There is a total of 16 episodes this season.
16.
So 6
so we
remain.
only have 6 more. So
actually, 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more. Here's a quick reminder of what those episodes are called: Metamorphosis, The Outpost, Pabu, Tipping Point, The Summit, Plan 99. Now remember, The Summit and Plan 99 are the finales. Those are air back to back on the 29th of March.
Right.
Everything else is a onesie, so that actually only leaves 1, 2, 3, 4 more episodes that are single. One more month, basically.
Right.
Single episode episodes, and I'm wondering. So next episode's called Metamorphosis. There's just no way to know anything about what that could possibly mean.
No, that could mean so many things.
It could mean so many things. I'm not even going to try to speculate here because that just sounds silly. But
I don't know. Like, what did you think kind of overall about this like arc? And this
I
episode
actually
in
I actually
general.
kind of liked it, to be honest. I think
Okay, fair enough.
I
Yeah, I see. That's what I'm like. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm like, I don't know why I'm the negative Nancy during this thing. I don't know
Well,
what I'm watching. I
I don't think
can't.
you're alone. This has got a 6.7 this episode on IMDb out of
Yeah.
10. Let's see what is the featured review? There's none. There's no user reviews. That's probably a bad sign, right?
Ooh, I should have put one in there.
Be the first to review. It says right here. You could go on to IMDb right now and be the first to review
I'd
this
be the
episode.
first. Ooh,
Usually
then I
there's
could be the featured
multiple
review.
by this time. Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty low bar, so I don't think you're gonna have a problem there. I mean, here's what I think. I think that this episode continues the work of the previous episode. It's not as
Yeah.
character driven necessarily,
No.
but it definitely plays into a lot of those same ideas. There's, and maybe I'm giving too much credit to like 2 lines of dialogue from the end of the episode about, you know, there being other threats in the galaxy than just the Empire, as
Yeah.
being one of those things. Kind of the Benny stuff is, I guess, just I think you're right. It's fine mostly. I think we've kind of seen this type of thing play out before, and I can't remember which specific episodes of the Clone Wars or whatever, but it just feels feels pretty rote in terms of like, workers are exploited by a boss who's hoarding all of the profits for themselves, and they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
giving the fair share. It's like, we've seen that before. You know, the Screen Crush friend of the show, Ryan Airy, was saying that like, hey, this is like Temple of Doom with like the kids in the mine. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess so. Just by like the look of it, and there's some drawbridges and or rope bridges, etc. But for me, I think it just feels like a fairly generic story. But I didn't mind it because a couple things. I thought it's fun watching the crew get their ship back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I thought the visuals were really cool. The look of the mine and the facility is very striking. A lot of reds and oranges. I think that's cool. I thought like just the general like the level of detail that we got from the animation is quite high in these last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
It's impressive. I mean, maybe not so much as much the last episode where there was kind of less interesting things going on from a visual perspective, but this week there's a lot to look at outside of just like a couple of Vista shots that we got last week. So I liked that part. I was intrigued by the idea that Sid did not come to help them.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. That's definitely going to be brought up, I guarantee.
100%.
Yeah.
110%.
Yeah, because that's going to play into, what was his name? I want to say Mochi, but that's not the right name.
Oh,
I'm like, why are they using all these M names?
the guy who like the great gangster guy from Faster?
Yeah, from Faster, yeah. Where he kind of warns them about her, right? So it's kind of playing into that a little bit, but see, like maybe that's kind of what it is with this episode, is that it felt to me like I've seen this storyline before, and
Like,
that's probably
do we need
why.
to spend a whole episode getting your ship back? I guess.
Well,
Is
not
that
even getting the
yeah.
ship back, but like just how you talked about how it's very like Temple of Doom, like, oh yeah, okay, yep, there's this bad guy and he's exploiting his workers and not like treating them well and their kids and lying to them. Like it's just a very recycled kind of storyline we've seen in other media. So maybe that's why I was just kind of like not as into it, because it didn't feel like a very unique plot line, I guess, for me. So maybe that's why I'm a little more like, yeah, I've seen this story play out. Like,
Yeah, and it's like
it was pretty
like,
predictable.
we talked about this
like,
last week, which is like, are they really not going to get their ship back? Like, of course they were. You know,
Yeah.
What I liked was seeing how to like, okay, I knew how it was going to end, but how do we get there? What are the
Yeah, how
twists
do we get
along the
there?
way?
Right,
I think
right.
there's some fun ones like Omega figuring out to use the Gonki as the way to track the ship. I think that's
I did like
that's
that.
clever.
That was cute. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that was very cute.
I also like, I'm not necessarily surprising that Benny sells her out
No.
here, but the way it plays out is kind of it happens very late in the episode, which is fun.
Mhm.
I like kind of watching him kind of grow into this larger understanding of kind of the wool being pulled back from his eyes.
Right.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, there were definitely aspects that I liked about it. I just think as an overall storyline, I was just kind of like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's
like,
fine.
I don't know. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, on to the next one.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the scene by scene breakdown here. So we're still on the mystery planet. We don't know what we never did learn the name of the planet, which is a little frustrating, to be honest. And we start at the abandoned spaceport that we left last week, and the batch is working to fix a broken down speeder skiff type machine. They're working to get it running so they can get to the town on the other half of the hemisphere, which is pretty funny. I mean, I don't know, maybe the gravity seems pretty standard. It's best not to think about these things in Star Wars, but if the gravity is pretty similar to Earth's gravity, that'd be like saying, let's get this car up and running so we can drive from Toronto to Moscow, like on another half of the of the hemisphere of the planet. You know?
Yeah, but you don't know how big the planet is.
Yeah, but if the planet is smaller, then the gravity would be different.
Is that how that works?
Yes.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. So maybe that's not how it works in Star Wars. I don't know.
Yeah, it's obviously not. I mean, you can breathe on every planet. I mean, that's what I said. It's best not to think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I guess that's
yeah.
that's true. That's fine.
Either way, they have to get things working so they can get to the only other town on the planet, at least in this half of the planet. They talk about having just enough power in the power cells to get them there, and this gives Omega the idea to track Gonki, who is of course also a power cell, with his binary reference code, which makes me think that this idea that you could track the location of, they can't track their ship, but they can track the components on it. It's kind of like Internet of Things, like IoT stuff. It's like, oh, well, I can just like, if you lose your luggage, if you have one of those like Apple AirTags in it, you can track that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yes,
so,
exactly.
So that's kind of, everything's connected in the Star Wars universe in that way. So you can just type in his binary code and you'll find out where he is. So that's kind of cool.
It's like,
actually,
it's like Find My iPhone or Find My Friends.
That's exactly. But in this case, it's Find My Gonki.
Yeah.
So, and this is kind of when I realized, because Wrecker is complaining about being hungry and hot. And that's when I realized, oh yeah, man, Sid didn't come to help them. So,
no,
I'm very curious how that's going to play out. The next episode's called Metamorphosis. I said I wasn't going to speculate, but now that I think about it, it's possible that the metamorphosis is for Sid going from being someone who wouldn't help them to being someone who would, sacrifice or risk something of her own neck to help these guys. Possibly, but or it's not that at all, and it's something entirely different. And Sid does stab them in the back. And it could be like the batch as a whole metamorphosizing. Is that the word? Metamorphing. I guess changing
into a different role. Like they're like, okay, we're kind of done working for Sid. We're gonna change. We're gonna change direction and go and start doing something else. Like do it our own way.
Right. I mean, so
morph into something new.
They are the A-team of space, right? And the A-team, their whole mission was to go and help people who can't help themselves, right?
Yeah.
And they've kind of been doing that, but like just by accident mostly, In this case, like today is a great example. This episode, right? They helped this mine community, but only because they needed their ship back, right? So maybe they take on a new kind of more active role in helping the galaxy, less fighting the Empire and more helping the little guy type of kind of thing, So we'll see. On the Marauder, so we skip over to where Gonki is. We are introduced to Benny, the thief who stole the ship. He's getting annoyed with Gonki and talking to someone on the radio. We get a very cool establishing shot of the town / mining facility. Again, a very beautiful kind of skybox and setting. We see that he must be hungry because he finds some old food on the ground and scarfs it down.
Yeah.
So it gives us, like a little bit of world building, a little bit of character building there about his situation. As the ship lands into this, I thought very cool, although funnily how specific the size of the door is. So just big enough to fit the ship with its wings folding up.
I like how they purposely made him like bad at flying too.
Yeah.
Like he's really wobbly, like bringing the ship into. I'm like, oh, I like that kind of detail.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Martez sisters when she was learning to fly that first time.
Yeah.
So they land in this like garage and they close the door and we get this kind of first shot of the mine. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool looking. And that's when we're introduced to Mako, who's the boss. And I don't know the species that he is, but I feel like this voice actor who I mentioned before, Jonathan Lepau, who voices Mako, has played very similar roles in the past. I feel like even on other Star Wars shows. And I found Mako to be maybe one of the most unoriginal characters in Star Wars I've seen in a long time. Like it just
Right,
so
yeah.
there's just nothing new under the sun about him, right?
No, it's just like a gluttonous,
Right.
like, yeah, just piece of shit kind of.
Right, big fat guy. Everyone else
Yeah.
is starving.
Mm-hmm.
Lording over everyone, type of attitude, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Weird
well,
robot hand.
yeah, weird robot hand, exactly. And Mako is skeptical about the ship, basically saying he's worried that it'll draw the wrong kind of attention, and orders that it's stripped for parts. I did find like the dialogue here is clever enough in the sense that it's giving us clues about the situation, right? He's saying, he's like, aren't you glad I brought you the ship? He's like, well, I don't, you think, these aren't just miners. Obviously, this is some sort of custom ship. Are you trying to cause me trouble? Right? After
Right,
all I've
right.
done for you, right? That kind of leaning into that kind of the concept of
Mm-hmm.
you should be thankful that I'm helping you at all, right?
Yeah.
And so we kind of get that aspect of it, and Benny doesn't seem to really notice that, or just kind of he's maybe either used to it, perhaps at that point.
Probably.
He asked if that's going to help him be considered the top earner, which we don't really know what that is, but we can kind of assume. And he says, "Oh, maybe," and then he gives him the droid as a show of appreciation, right?
Yeah.
I do like also that he has to kind of like beg for water rations. Basically, I've been out there for 4 days in the Northern Territories, which is where we were last week.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, okay, sure." And he gives him like a drop of water, basically, and it's like, "You're welcome." So,
Yeah, just terrible.
good enough introduction to this kind of fairly predictable character, but it's really good shorthand story, like world building.
Oh
And
yeah, you
establishing.
very like quickly get the idea of like how everything kind of works here. You're like, oh, okay, yep, like this young kid works for this gluttonous boss and he doesn't give them much but he acts like he's giving them the world, right?
Right.
Treats them like he's giving them the world. Like, oh yeah, I don't know. This ship might be more trouble than it's worth. It's like, oh, shut up. Like, this is a huge like profit for
Yeah. What
you.
are you talking about?
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like guaranteed this is huge, but you're gonna downplay it so that you don't have to give him as much
Well,
for
and
it.
this is
Like,
kind of that strategy where like, if you hold all the cards, you hold all the information, you
yeah,
don't teach anybody anything. It's like they don't know what something's worth. Benny doesn't know what the ship is
exactly.
worth, so to him, it's like, oh, maybe it is worth nothing, right? But
Yeah. It's like,
you know,
oh, I guess it is maybe a hassle. Sorry, my bad. Like,
right, exactly. Um, so that's Mako, and then we get back with the batch. We get a cute shot of them. They first find Gonki's signal, which surprises Wrecker. I thought he's like, oh, wait, what? And then they take off on the skiff to go find him. And there's like funny shot of them all riding the skiff together, and it's very funny. So that's a little bit of the opening bit of establishing part of this episode. Any initial thoughts?
yeah, I mean, kind of like we said, it's just they do a very quick job of giving you all the information you need kind of about this. I mean, it's not crime, but like this boss and, the operation he's got going on. So they do a good job of like just quick and dirty, like, yep, here it is, laying it all out for us right away. So
Right.
it's doesn't take much like to figure these characters out.
No, it does not. All right, so we get to the town / mine, and when they arrive there, it's nighttime, and they don't have really good intel on what's going on below. What is cool about this mine is that it's got like this like central chamber that is protected by a ray shield. And we know ray shields are the worst types of shield because they're the hardest to get through in Star Wars. And then you have kind of this like underground facility, which I think is a kind of a cool design. So they get there and they're above ground and they're kind of scoping it out, and they're like, well, we know where Gonki is and we can tell that there's like at least one person with him, but we don't really know much else. So they have to sneak in to go get him, and so the plan is to go get Gonki and work out the rest from there. We kind of get a cut back to Benny, and he's kind of deciding what to do with Gonki. Looks like he's going to sell him off for parts because he doesn't work properly. And that's when the batch arrive to question him. And I love this sequence so much. I think it is so well executed with this kind of like, Hunter surprises him first with like, "Where's our ship?" Right?
Yeah.
Or I think he first says, "That's our defective power droid." Right?
Yeah.
And then he starts freaking out and he tries to run, gets on his like speeder bike, and then Wrecker clotheslines him. Which should be extremely painful.
Yeah.
And then he tries to
unconscious.
Yeah, and then he tries to get up, and right away we have Omega with her little bow and arrow thing.
Yeah.
And like the way that the orange or purpley light comes off of that, like, and illuminates him. I just like, it's all this one shot. I just think it's so cool. It's the best. To me, it's the best part of the episode because it's just like, it's so dynamic. It's got like all the characters involved, and it just looks really good. The lighting's really good. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and it's fun to see the Bad Batch like
work as a
not
team.
that they're work as a team, but not that they're like bad guys, but they look pretty menacing during this.
Totally.
Like if you're that kid, you don't know. Like he doesn't know that they're good guys, right?
You don't
like,
think
and
that
just
the turquoise and the orange that they painted on their armor is enough to make them look like good guys?
No. Like you just have these guys in like full military suits coming up being like, you stole our ship, and then this massive dude clotheslines you. Like,
yeah,
you'd probably be like, I'm gonna die right now for taking this guy's stuff. But, so yeah, I feel like they really do a good job of making them not too like friendly.
Wrecker looks terrifying in the dark.
Like they're not. Yeah, they don't approach like, oh hey man, you took our ship. It's just like pretty scary. So
yeah. So there's a lot of dialogue here about like caring about a defective droid. He's like, "That's our defective droid." And then he's like, "What are you guys gonna do about this droid? It's broken." And he's like, "Don't worry about it." And then he's like, later on in the episode, he's like, "Oh, are you okay?" or whatever. And I think maybe even the same scene. And he's like, "Why would you care about this droid?" So again, really driving home the idea that most people don't give a shit about droids. Never mind, defective ones, and that these are the good guys and they care. That's kind of the
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like they're not super mean.
We
like our broken power. Yeah, we like our broken power droid that just gonks around and makes
literally
noise.
doesn't do anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Wrecker uses them to work out. It's fine.
Yeah, and they've used them to find the ship. So
yeah.
So they need to convince him basically to help get their ship back. Right. At first, he plays coy, but reveals that he gave the ship to Mako, the boss of. And I love the kind of feeling like, I gave it to Mako. He's like, Mako. He just assumes that everyone knows who that is.
Right.
Kind of this like small town thing. Like, you don't know Steve. That kind of thing.
It's like, oh, he runs this place. It's like, okay, well, we just got here. How would we know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it probably shows like how small his world is, right?
Exactly.
Like he just assumes like, why would you not know who he is? Like he's the biggest thing in my life, kind of thing. Like the scariest.
Right.
Like, just probably assume everybody in the galaxy knows who Mako is. Yeah.
That's right, exactly. And again, shorthand, but I thought that exact same thing. And I think it's a really good point. Anyway, so he's like, I'll help you take you to your ship, but he doesn't want to go against Mako after everything he's done for him. He wants to be grateful, and doesn't want to be associated with the Bad Batch at all in case they're caught. So next we see them working together, and they're scouting the mine. We learn from Benny that the Ipsium mine was used to be run by the Techno Union during the war. Mako took over when they were forced out following the war, obviously, and has been running it ever since. So this is a fun little bit of dialogue here. Obviously, we know the Techno Union. It would have been... I feel like it's a missed opportunity not to have Echo here, who obviously has a bone to pick with the Techno Union.
Yeah, because that's like Wat Tambor and those guys, right?
Exactly.
Like they kind of float around and look weird.
I think they have like weird, don't they have like wheels for feet or something like that?
I don't know. Like there's some kind of thing about them, like they don't float. They're actually like standing on something, or I can't remember.
Yeah,
I can't remember the details.
I think and they're like part machine. Right.
Yeah, but they just like float around. They're creepy.
And anyway, yeah, most of them were killed at the end of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, doesn't
the
Anakin
leadership.
go kill them all?
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
right. And you know, what was left of the Techno Union was probably absorbed by the Empire. Why they wouldn't
Yeah.
want to keep the Ipsium mine running? Maybe they just didn't have the resources. It's hard to say. But either way, when there's a power vacuum, people love to fill it, and that's where Mako came in. He filled the power vacuum and took over the mine.
Yeah, I would assume that he probably sells the Ipsium to the Empire. Like,
Oh yeah,
the
100%.
Empire just probably like doesn't care enough to man it themselves, but they
Yet.
just, they don't man it, they don't monitor it, they don't man it. They're just like, yeah, we'll just buy whatever it from him whenever
For now,
they've got enough.
until it becomes an inconvenience, and they'll just go and take it over.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And then staff it with slave labor.
Yeah.
So they where was I? Omega questions Benny's skills as a thief and a miner. I thought he's like, what do you mean? Those are useful skills. And I'm like, actually, I kind of agree with him on that. Although Omega maybe is a little naive in that case.
Well, yeah. She doesn't really know what the quote unquote real world is like.
Right.
What a lot of people have to deal with.
No street smarts is
No,
none. Yeah. So they scout out the patrols and are reminded that they can't use blasters. This is the first of a couple times that we were reminded that they can't use blasters in there without risk of blowing it all up, right? And their plan is to sneak in through the smoke/steam stack, which blasts off every 60 seconds, which I thought was a kind of a fun. I did not expect that. That's another one of those fun twists. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. I did not anticipate this element. So they arrive at the top of the tower, and Hunter takes the first run at the infiltration. I thought it was really cool the way he rappels face first down the smokestack and has this lean forward thing. I just thought that was really cool, and very Mission Impossible style. They get get to the kind of the near the bottom. And surprising everyone, a droid guard arrives while Hunter's kind of waiting mid grapple line, and he has to they have to kind of figure out what's going on. I love how the tension here ramps up really quickly, ratchets up. We know the stakes. It's every 60 seconds. We get a timer, 30 seconds, right? And Benny's like, it's not going to work. Bail. And then he drops this spanner or something or flashlight, and then Hunter catches it, and that's super cool, but also very Mission Impossible, because that's what happens in Mission Impossible, right?
Right, because you can't let anything touch the censored floor or whatever,
or alert the droid in this case.
Yeah.
Although, I'm not sure why it really matters, because he could have just jumped down and beat him up, because apparently that's what he really
did
does
anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Hunter makes a move on the droid right before time runs out. He beats him up and escapes through the exit door just in time. I like how he doesn't get the door closed, so steam is kind of shooting through the door. I thought that was a cool touch. And then the rest of them follow. Everyone's safe. Really cool sequence. Another kind of plus for the episode in this case for me. That previous sequence as well as this one, I was very into it at this point. Any thoughts on the rest of the episode so far?
Yeah, I did. I very much kind of liked how the same thing with the smokestack there, how they did the timing and him having to full blown tackle that droid and basically kick it into the steam, which I assumed was going to happen when you kind of see that being set up. But it also kind of shows this new kind of thief kid, how these guys work as a team, right? And how capable they actually are.
Well, I think Omega's a little. She's like, you stole the wrong ship, pal. She's like, because I think he says you guys are definitely not Ipsium miners, which I think is a funny. It's a good line, but it's Omega, you just watch the ship most of the time, so maybe
cool
chill.
It,
cool it a little.
Yeah, you're also a child, so
yeah, exactly. It's funny. I didn't see you being the first one rappelling down the side of this thing.
Yeah.
So next thing we get is an establishing shot of the interior of the mine. A lot of red, oranges, like I said. People pushing carts with rocks over long bridges. Again, that's probably where you get the Temple of Doom imagery from. Tech notes that the mine's conditions are kind of subpar, and that Benny tells him that it's because the Ipsium has begun to degrade, And for that reason, I thought this is so funny. For that reason, Mako had to lower wages to keep the mine operational. How generous of him. Which he says later is kind of better than it closing altogether, right? Which
Yeah.
I can see that angle, but it's kind of like sounds like someone wrote that for you, kind of thing,
Oh yeah, it's yeah. Like you'd think, but I mean, at the same time, Mako has a bunch of pretty much children employed, so they're really not gonna like put those two together, right?
Right.
About like that doesn't make a lot of sense, or like, oh, how convenient that you get to pay us less.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
man, shoot, that sucks
yeah, but like,
you.
thank you, thanks
Yeah,
for twisting it in a way that I have to thank you now for saving my job.
that's right. Um, it comes at a funny time where I'm reading a lot of articles about how the quiet quitting phenomenon, which I think is stupid. It's not
Right.
called quiet quitting; it's just doing your job that what you're paid to do. So
Yeah.
let's just be clear on that. That's not a real thing. And if you think that
No,
this
it's
is a
such a
problem, you're reading the wrong
boomer
newspapers.
thing to be
Yeah.
like, blah 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 blah.
You
You
just should
should
be
be,
grateful you have a job at all. One of those
yeah.
things. And meanwhile,
Or
we're
it's
in a
like,
economy that has a major labor shortage. So really, it should be the other way
mm,
around, and employers should be happy that they have workers at all.
exactly.
So
Yeah, which
anyway,
is so funny. Yeah, I love it.
so it's kind of like it's exactly this is the Mako's definitely a boomer.
Yeah.
No offense to our boomer listeners, of course.
Yeah. We mean the bad kinds,
Yeah,
not the
the
good
bad kind.
kinds.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not doing class warfare or generational warfare here on the show.
No.
Well, that's actually not true. Class warfare, I'm fine with. It's generational that I have the problem with.
Yeah.
That I'm okay with. So all right. So they arrive at their ship and they find that the hyperdrive has been removed, which I thought would have been. I thought it was going to be like when when Mando finds the Razor Crest and
Oh, and it's like completely ripped apart.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
I thought
that
so
would be like
too.
that.
I was like, oh shit, like I wonder if they're gonna show up and like half the parts, not half the parts, but like a good majority of the parts are already sold and like
Right.
gone. Yeah, or they're gonna have to like do a lot more work. Like at least it's like, okay, yeah, the hyperdrive is out, but it's still like right there.
Would
Like,
that
it's
have
under
been
the ship.
better or worse in your opinion for the episode
Um,
if that had happened like that?
I don't know. I think it just would have been probably the same. Like maybe not the hyperdrive, but like yeah, I mean like they could have like flown off world and then maybe needed Sid's help still to like get a hyperdrive, like get a new hyperdrive or something
Sure.
like that. But yeah, I know it. I think the way they did it, it was just better that how they just started taking it apart because they really didn't get enough time to like fully take apart this ship and start selling things that quickly.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
it feels like they've only had like a day. So
Yeah, probably not even.
yeah,
So, well, yeah, but it's probably at least a day because he presumably would have brought that chip back.
yeah. So it would have been a little wild if
Yeah.
like all of it was sold, but
Yeah, but they have to do mining, right? They don't have time
Yeah.
to just be stripping ships.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Benny tries to bail at this point. He's like, "Okay, well, I got your ship back. Oh, sorry, he doesn't have the parts. Not my fault, right?" And that doesn't work out for him. And the rest of them get work, kind of repairing the ship. Omega reminds them that they have the ray shield guarding the exit, so they have to deal with that. Benny says that the batch will stick out too much to access the central tower, which houses the controls for the ray shield. So he suggests that Omega be his chaperone, but quote unquote not dressed like that. So he gives her a little poncho.
Yeah. Like just ponchos. They just keep giving Omega ponchos as they did the same thing in the Senate.
I think they're easy to model. I think is the
I
idea.
guess so, yeah. Because I'm like, yep, oh, there she's wearing another like coat. To,
Yeah, it
as
reminds me of Jedi of Fallen Order, where all of your outfits are just different ponchos.
Oh, different color ponchos.
Yeah.
Yes. That's so funny.
Okay, so we then catch up with Mako, who is in his office or some type of private room, and he's like slurping away at soup and eating like random food. And
Yeah, meat.
this scene is so weird to me because the way he's moving is so fast.
Right?
Like,
Yeah.
Like he's starving to death, but like he wouldn't be because he's the one who controls all the food. So why is he eating it all so fast?
I think they're trying to just show how like gluttonous he is. So he's like overly consuming this food so fast. But
Right.
yeah, like I think they're just trying to convey a different level of like
it's too fast.
greed. Yeah, but I totally know what you mean. He's eating like he's never ate in his
Yeah.
life, like starving. Yeah.
Sometimes I eat like that when I've smoked too much weed and I've got mad munchies,
Gross.
and I'm just like, oh
Oh,
man, I'm so hungry. Give me a piece of this, and I want a
but
little of that,
oh my god. But yeah, you're right. Like it probably would have made a little bit more sense if he had like the droids waiting on him and he was just like lounging, like eating,
Yes,
right?
I think that
But
would have been. I thought would have been cool actually, but
yeah, but maybe they're just trying to show that he's just really gross and
yeah, that too.
gluttonous and
He
a
is gross, and
monster.
this scene is gross, so it's effective in that way. But I just thought it was
Yeah.
weird, just how fast he was eating. So.
Yeah.
He's like, I guess the kids are waiting for him, and they're like, oh, they can wait till I'm good and ready, So just really driving home that he's a crappy guy. Back with Omega and Benny, the news that Benny needs to swipe an access card is dropped on Omega. She's like, oh, another MacGuffin, and she's like, it's like, well, I'm not part of his inner circle, and she's like, really, you're not? He's like, well, I plan to be. Right. And again, more hints at kind of like how he's kind of mistreated or not kind of given the credit he deserves. And then we get this great line where she says that she needs to act natural, which of course always reminds me of fly casual.
Fly casual,
Right?
yeah.
Which is one of my favorite all time Star Wars lines that I've referenced probably more than almost any. So Benny has to hobnob with the regular mining crew. And we meet the regular top earner, Drake. Who tells him not to get his hopes up about being named top earner. He's like, well, you can't be top earner every time. And he's like, well, can I? Which makes the and then because he wins again, I get this impression that there's some sort of like backdoor deal that he's got,
Yeah. I love how all these kids just have like wild like face and neck tats too. I don't know if that's like if they're like a subspecies of human that has this, or whether they're tattoos or like
those are for sure
markings.
Tattoos.
Yeah, I assume that they're tattoos or like identifiable markings from like working in the mines, like how they would do that, like tattoo people, so that where they're supposed to be working or where they like quote unquote belong or who they belong to, right? So you can't like escape. But I was just like, whoa, I'm like, Benny has full blown just throat tattoos, nothing else. I'm like, that's wild.
Yeah, I also thought that was an interesting choice.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, well, I mean, he's got such distinct look that I have to imagine he'll be back at some point. They do tease.
It's like that poor kid. Like that's probably the worst place to get tattooed on your entire body. Is like the front of your throat. I've heard it's one of the worst spots.
It does seem, especially as a guy
tattooed.
like your Adam's apple there.
Yeah, like it's just so sensitive and like, yeah, I don't know. That and like your skull are supposed to be really bad.
My neck is so sore from the flight here and like not sleeping well. I feel like at this point I would take some net tattoo pain to just distract from the muscle pain.
Like needles into your the front of your throat.
Give me those. I want it.
God.
Okay, so as Mako enters the room to deliver the tally, Benny swipes Drake's access card, very pickpocket style, and instead of leaving, Benny wants to stick around to hear what the news is. Mako says that it's been a lean season, and everyone, including him, have had to go without. Which we've heard these types of speeches before, right? He notes that some are not keeping up with others, right? And that, again, it seems, Drake is named the top earner.
Right.
And he gets a bowl of soup as the winner. That's his big prize.
Yeah.
Very similar to like you get flavor with your slurp.
with your slop.
That's right. From Andor. So again, and in fact, this is interesting because even Tech calls out that this is a similar tactic to what the Empire is doing, right? And then, of course, we see that with Andor, which is an interesting kind of callback. And then, so he does add that the rest, will have to work harder and longer to keep things going and are given one bowl of soup for all of them to share.
Yeah. Awful.
Yeah, super awful. I mean, listen, I understand. Like, I feel like this episode would be more interesting, right, if Mako was less like cartoonishly evil.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, then we could get a better sense of why Benny and the others kind of like want to gain his favor and like, oh, well, you don't just get a bowl of soup. Maybe you get like your own private quarters or something interesting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what could we not be a little bit more nuanced here? I know this is a kid's show, but like, let's bring, it doesn't have to be so black and white. And so again, like I said, like mustache twirling evil, and to the point where it's like so transparently evil, like, oh, some of you aren't pulling your weight, so share this bowl of soup. It's like, well, like, really, it's that bad? Things are that, quote unquote, we're supposed to believe that they're that bad, and you're this fat dude, like, we're not. How are you staying so fat,
Right? Like, you'd think people would catch on to that, and like, yeah, exactly. No, I totally know what you mean, and this is kind of what I was saying before about how, like, this specific storyline just felt like I've seen it before in, like, many other stories and many other, like, movies and TV and mediums. Like, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, typical, like, gluttonous boss being mean to orphans.
That's right.
Like,
yeah, I mean, like, literally, like, it's like, well, please, I have some more.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a lot of that stuff. I think, okay.
yeah.
So Benny's pissed, and they're on their way to the central tower now that they've got the news. And he's like, man, I brought them a ship, and it still wasn't enough to get me top earner. And but yet somehow he's like, oh, but you know what? I'm gonna work even harder this time because I'm gonna impress Mako. You'll see. Right?
Yeah, like, where are you getting your motivation from?
Yeah, I don't know. Right?
Why?
If all you get is a soup, like, that's it. Like, it looks like a gross soup at that. So,
yeah,
it's like, well, we have to earn our share here, right? It's like, okay,
yeah.
If the share is one person gets one bowl of soup and everyone else shares a bowl of soup, doesn't really sound like that's how you earn your share, to be honest. But
no,
so they reach the control room, and Omega plugs in the special device that Tech gave her to kind of access the controls. And as she has her back turned, Benny presses some type of button, presumably an alarm, a silent alarm. Benny starts to chat with Omega, probably to buy time, it seems like. But
yeah,
he doesn't
so.
really know what to talk about, so he kind of starts talking about her, I guess. And he says that he's surprised that the batch treat her like one of the team, and he wishes, opening up to her, basically, he wishes that he could get that from Mako. And Omega's surprised. She's like, why? It doesn't seem like he gives a shit about you or anyone else.
Yeah.
Right?
She's like, clues in right away.
Yeah, it's so transparent, even for someone who doesn't have any street smarts, right?
Yeah. She's got people smarts, though. Like,
yeah,
she can,
that's true.
Yeah.
She's intuitive when it comes to, like, people's motivations and their feelings, and kind of like an empath a little bit.
Exactly, yeah.
It doesn't seem like Mako cares about anyone, and wonders why he doesn't just leave. He says that, he doesn't really see it that way, saying that Mako kept them in business and that, he can't leave because it's his home, which she can relate to by saying that, their ship is their home, which he, of course, apologizes for stealing, right? Omega gives her rations to him for helping, and he's kind of shocked, right? Surprised that anyone would just give him something for not that he didn't, quote unquote, earn, right? And he seems to feel bad, but not for very long, because Mako comes in shortly after. Nice to hear Omega's theme play here, which we haven't heard, I feel like, enough this season.
Yeah.
But we get it here, and it's quite nice. I forgot how good it was. Any thoughts on this couple scenes?
I mean, yeah, like, I kind of got the feeling that, Benny was, it's hard to read him a little bit on, like, what he feels bad or not about kind of what he's doing behind the scenes, because I feel like as soon as she gives him, like, that ration and stuff, like,
right,
and shares with him, that he's kind of starting to feel a little guilty about.
A little bit.
Yeah, like, I feel like he's kind of like, he's trying to read her a little bit and be like, why is this person who doesn't even know me, like sharing with me and being so nice to me, and
right.
like, so she's kind of showing him a completely different side of how teamwork can be, and how, life can be when you have different people that you work with, right, and work for.
Yeah, opening up his perspective.
Yeah, like, kind of showing him a different way that people can treat you, and
right. It doesn't have to be this competition, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So back at the ship, the rest of the Bad Batch have almost finished putting the ship back together and are almost ready to leave. But they discuss how they can't use weapons to escape, as the people here are they already have it bad enough, basically. Which is kind of an interesting tact to take. Their moral compass is very, like, it's hard to track sometimes. It's like, okay, well, if you say so. I swear you killed so many things for less reasons, but all right. Tech notes that Mako is using similar tactics to the Empire. As we mentioned, one of Mako's men arrive. Actually, two of them arrive to check on the ship, and Hunter has to deal with them, so he goes and chases after them. At this point, back with Omega and Benny, they're just about ready to leave when Omega questions him on the claim that the Ipsium is degraded after reading some of Mako's prophet reports.
Right.
Benny is surprised that he has to think. Is surprised, but he has to think quick because Mako arrives at that exact same moment, so he like hides the data pad. And we get this kind of cool line about my thief has caught another thief, which I thought was actually kind of cool. At least the reading of it was.
Yeah.
Benny gives up the rest of the batch. I think this is kind of where it's like he's not quite out of it yet because he almost immediately gives up the rest of them, right? And this kind of pleases Mako, who says that, quote, the title of top earner is definitely in your future, which is like the worst backhanded compliment. It's like he can't even at this moment tell him, okay, this will finally earn you top earner. No, it's like maybe one day, right? This will definitely put you in contention, possibly.
Yeah, but still not quite good enough.
Yeah,
actually.
exactly.
So yeah.
Well, again, this is kind of that like negging thing, I guess, kind of.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like kind of like insulting people with like faint praise at the same time.
Yeah, like backhanded compliments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, anyway, it's very obviously effective here. So Omega is escorted out by Mako and the two droids. Hunter, meanwhile, was chasing Mako's men, which has separated him from Tech and Wrecker, who are then called out by Mako for trying to steal their ship back. I do like, I was like, well, it's actually our ship. He's like, not anymore. And I just like, this actually I thought was kind of a cool, because he really feels like he has all the power here. And if it wasn't for kind of Benny kind of growing a backbone, they were kind of screwed, right? And I do, and again, I give credit to the episode because despite being predictable, it wasn't clear how this was all going to play out. Even up until like just the scene before this, right? So we get another reminder of the no blaster fire rule as they have a standoff on that kind of like rickety bridge. Which
that's where you have to have standoffs.
Yeah,
like you can't have them anywhere else other than super high up on a rickety bridge. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love how he's like, remember, don't shoot anything because otherwise we're all blowing up. And then Wrecker's like, we don't miss. Right. And I just think that's so sick.
It is. Yeah.
Omega is being held prisoner by one of the droids and being dangled over the pit. Meanwhile, Benny, who continues to read the prophet reports while Mako orders the batch to be sentenced to 10 years in the mines. And I love the little chuckle. He's like, if you survive that long, right?
Yeah.
Like
you could force those guys. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, who's gonna those force... 3 droids are gonna put them to work? Come on.
Well, yeah, like what the other kids are gonna make Wrecker do shit. Like he'll luck. Just like I'm like, okay, what are you gonna do, man? Like long term, these guys are not sticking around. Like well, there's no way.
I think the implication is like, I'll just say this to appease everyone, but I will murder them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the implication. Yeah. So Benny finally decides to grow a backbone. Good for him. And he calls out Mako for his lies about the profits from the mine. Basically saying that, like, hey, we've been working hard and you've been skimming off the top and keeping all the profits for yourself. And, apparently I think if you read the Arabesh on the thing, it basically says that the price of Ipsium has continued to go up. And that he's been making more and more. And so I find that like it's fascinating concept in it, I guess, in theory. I like, there's a little bit of parallel to like the fake news of it all. It's like, if you just say stuff enough times, people will believe it. In this case, all you have to do to kind of like counter this is deny, right? So in this case, the first thing that Mako tries to do is deny that he's lying. Don't listen to him. Right. And, but I like this, despite Drake being a bit of a douche. He sides with Benny. He's like, hey, let me see that. Right. And, they kind of gang up on him.
I do like that it very quickly happens.
Yes.
Cause like, it's kind of annoying when you have to like go back and forth with like, oh, like which side are the rest of the kids gonna take and blah, blah, blah. So I am glad that they just very quickly were like, oh, here's the evidence right in my face. Fuck this guy. Like,
Yeah.
and just immediately turn on him, which
Well,
I
I
like.
also like how he goes right to being like, from trying to lie about it to being like, yeah, so what? So I did take it, but I was just taking my share. You guys wouldn't have survived without me. Like, it's all,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
you still owe me everything. And kind of
Mhm.
just like falling right back to that kind of like soulless, kind of disgusting, self-centered
Yeah.
asshole level. So that all works for me. So to try to like buy himself a little bit more time or try to kind of take back a little bit of control, Mako orders for Omega to be thrown into the pit, right?
Yeah.
So Omega at that point kind of like wiggles around and buys herself enough time so that when she does fall, the droid, first of all, goes with her, and that Hunter can use his kind of like grapnel gun thing
Yeah.
to swing up and
catch her.
catch her. And I got to be
Yeah.
honest, pretty badass. I would certainly would
Oh,
be
yeah.
terrified to just jump off there and just hope that someone's going to catch me.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
And I like that she kind of can like hold her own there too. Like it's not just
Yeah.
like she's able to fight with that droid pretty well and like put up a good enough fight to like unbalance him and like throw it off too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like that they, you know, it's not just, I don't know, she's not as damselly anymore. Like still needs to be saved, but
She's
put it-
she's
can
a
put
little
it in enough
stubborn,
work.
which is I find a little annoying. But other than that,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree
yeah.
with you.
but yeah, no, it was pretty sick move. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, like Hunter just whatever. What do you call those things? When Batman
it's
has
like a
them?
Batman gun. It's
Like a grappling
It's a
hook.
grapple hook. In the Batman Arkham
Grapple
games, they
gun.
called it a grapnel gun.
Yeah.
Either way, it's super cool, badass.
Yeah,
he's
I was like,
basically
grappling
Batman.
hooks are always pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a lot of them. They use one to rappel down, and then he has got this one too. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so with Omega safe, Mako tries to sick his remaining droids on the miners, but Wrecker uses 2 precise shots to take out the 2 droids, leaving
Yeah.
him fair game for the rest of those kids, and they kind of gang up on him. Mako tries to take them on himself, but he falls over the bridge and hangs on by
Yeah.
one hand. For some reason, Benny tries to help him, but he's so stubborn that he chooses not to help and kind of self-sabotages himself
Right.
into his
Yeah.
own death. Imagine being so
Mhm.
stubborn that you, instead of asking for help, you
You'd
would
rather
rather
die.
die. Yeah.
Yeah. I also like that they like specifically didn't make any of the kids give him that like blow that makes him fall off
Right.
the thing.
He
He
fell
kind
off
of
his
does a
own.
weird like
Yeah.
comedic cartoony like whoa like
Yeah.
spins
Yeah.
around when he like throws a whatever, not a punch but like a swing, and then he throws himself off the bridge. Which shows that he's just useless. Like it's like he can't fight either. His droids did his fighting and did his like bully work for him too. It's just like, yeah, he's not even capable of like actually fighting.
Yeah. It's despite his like gross middle hand thing, right?
Yeah.
Which ultimately he's like goes to reach out with his middle hand and like grips too hard and like Benny drops
Yeah.
him, right? So he dies. Good riddance. Back with the ship, they reunite with Gonki again and get all their stuff back from Benny. And he's like, "Well, you don't believe that I have it all? Oh, okay, fair enough." And so he gets all their stuff back. Omega asks, the classic question that you ask at the very end of anything, which is, "What are you going to do now?" And
Yeah.
which apparently in this case is stay behind at the mine and continue to mine Ipsium, because that's all they know. And but this time
Yeah.
it's going to be good because they can share the profits evenly. Although I have to suspect that someone else is going to come around and try to take advantage of them.
I mean,
sooner than
probably
later.
that like
Yeah.
whatever Drake kid will take over, and yeah, like Lord of the Flies. But
Exactly, but with neck tattoos.
yeah, it's like what I only saw. I think it was just boys down there. So I'm like, I don't know how well a
this will
bunch
probably
of
end well, right? Yeah.
teenage boys running a mine is going to
Yeah,
gonna go.
exactly.
But
Well, I mean, it can't go any worse than it was, I guess, is the idea.
it's true. Yeah, they're probably better off anyway. So
So Omega gets sad. And she's like, "Okay, well, good luck." And he's kind of like, "Well, if you ever need a thief, I owe you one," which I think is a little bit of like foreshadowing. I'm sure we'll see him again, and we'll be sure to recognize him because he has those 2 massive rectangles on his neck.
yeah.
Okay. So Omega then kind of like looks longingly out into the distance and says, gets sad, saying that the Empire isn't the only threat out there. There's more people like Mako around who are taking advantage of people. And Tech kind of consoles her and says, that's true, but there's also more people like us out here as well, which to me is kind of an allusion to the I guess the Rebel Alliance, right? There's more people who are willing to stand up against evil, and I want to believe that the show is going to lead into some sort of origins of the Rebel Alliance of some kind, that these guys will be a part of it, but it's almost like too many of the stories in Star Wars lead to that same conclusion, so I'd almost like it to be a little bit different in this case. But I do like the obvious allusion to it here is nice, considering the timeline and where we are. We get a final shot of the ship leaving the planet. Nice vista to look at. Cut to credits. I'm sure we'll get to deal with the fact that Sid left them for dead next week. But thoughts on the finale here?
Yeah, I mean, overall, this arc was like totally fine for me. Like it wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't like terrible either. Like it was just kind of, I think it's just because it was predictable. So maybe that's why I was a little bit more not as engaged to it.
Well, it was
than
also...
I have been with some of the other arcs, but because like we said, it was like it's a very typical storyline of like workers rising up and finding out that their boss has been lying to them and all that kind of stuff, right? So, yeah, and at the same time, I mean, it seems like this all happens over the span of like about 24 hours. And Sid did tell them she needed a couple days,
right? Okay,
too. So I mean, like it's not like it's been a week.
Plausible deniability here.
Yeah, a little bit, but or watch, she's gonna like show up as they're leaving and be like, "What the hell? Like you didn't even need my help." And be all Sid and mad about it.
Right.
But
I don't think that they're gonna feel that same way.
No.
Right.
I feel like they're definitely gonna give her a hard time for like not immediately coming and helping them. Like I feel like they're gonna go back and be like, "Hey, like we got to be able to count on you to help us out when we're in trouble." Like
right. It's a two-way relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think they're probably going to give her a little bit of grief, be like, luckily we were able to like do it ourselves, but what if we weren't?
I have to imagine this completely reshapes the way that they look at that relationship. That, I mean, that would be that's the only logical thing to me that makes sense here.
Yeah, I would hope so. Like, and then they're kind of, maybe this is kind of us getting away from the Sid stories, which is maybe what I'm not loving so much too, is like, yeah, I'm like the Sid missions are fine, but that she sends them on, but I always find a little bit more entertainment out of
you'd like to feel like there's more meaning to it, and those kind of I feel like they're kind of hollow.
And I feel like they keep talking about the greater like other things going on in the world and other people who need help, and they keep alluding to this and keep alluding to like they want to be the good guys and they want to help people. So I was like, maybe we'll get into more of that in like the next, the last kind of few episodes here, and and tie up some of that stuff about like clones defecting and everything going on, right? So there's still a lot of story, I think, that is going to happen in these last few episodes.
Oh, there's lots of, I mean, either that or this season's a big disappointment, right? So
yeah.
I just don't imagine that'll be the case. So anyway, it's fine. I like that it's better. It's better than a one-off episode in the sense that it's at least a two-parter, which kind of gives it a little bit more weight. But other than that, it's fine. I liked last week's episode more than this one, just in terms of what it's able to do from a character perspective. But this one was more interesting from an action perspective and visual perspective. So I think they kind of balance each other out there. And like I said, next week is Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is next week, whatever that means, and whenever that might air. I have to imagine why would they stack up the Mandalorian premiere with a mid-season episode of The Bad Batch? It seems problematic, but who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm not. What do I look like? An executive at Disney? So
yeah.
Any final thoughts before we close out here?
Yeah, not really. I'm excited for Mando.
Yeah, me too.
Next week.
Yeah. There's
pumped.
Yeah, make sure to go back and rewatch the first two seasons, and don't forget those two episodes of the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
those are key. Otherwise, you'd be very confused about why Grogu is where he is at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, and the other thing I hope that it's not like a 42-minute episode. I would like something a little bit longer, a little bit meatier than that for
me
premiere.
Too. Yeah.
And I think they've kind of learned that lesson, but we'll see. Either way, next week is up in the air in terms of what the schedule is going to look like. So like I said, keep an eye on the Twitter at Tower Babblecast for whatever it is we're going to do. We don't know what that is yet. And hopefully it'll be a regular schedule, or at least close to a regular schedule. Either way, there's going to be probably at least 2 episodes next week covering those. And also look for the film club, which will be either up before the end of the month or right after. So there might be a slight delay there. Either way, you get access to that at the 250 level for the next 3 months. So jump on that now while you still have the time. Okay. Anyway, that's at patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast. All right.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week with Metamorphosis. Until then, may the Force be with you. Bye.
Alrighty. Yeah, me too. I'll chat with you later. Okay, bye.